Welcome to the Keeping the Nostalgia Live show. As you can see, I am your host, Billy Powell. With us today is Coach Stafford Stephenson. Coach Stephenson, thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to help keep the nostalgia alive and share your stories of this great game of basketball, be it from Virginia, where you're from, or Indiana, where you landed, or Wake Forest, or Southern Illinois, or I think, if I'm not mistaken, Emory or Henry College.
Yep.
But thank you for taking some time with us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me, Billy. This is great, and I think it's really, really important, especially with a little bit of that Indiana background thrown in. You have a tendency to really, sink your teeth into something like that, and you're helping bring that up and keep it alive.
You guys can go to Keeping the Nostalgia Alive. That's all one word, keepingthenostalgialive.podbean. It's PODBEAN.com. And we have over 200 shows there where you can listen to Rick Mount, Kent Benson, Coach Gene Cady. I mean, the list goes on. And there's even small, I love to interview people who have been associated with the game of basketball, officiated, coached, played, we're just fans. So there is just so much there at keepingthenostalgialive.podbean.com. Download it, listen to it at your convenience. Also, a lot of you are probably watching this on our YouTube channel, which is the Keeping the Nostalgia Alive show. But I wanted to let everybody know where they can listen and view before we get into Coach Stephenson's interview. And Coach, do you still go by Coach, or have you been out of it long enough that and in the insurance business enough that you don't, or does it?
It still comes up every now and then. Maybe not every time, but it does come up, and it makes you feel good, And it's not just winning and losing games, but there's a lot in the game of basketball as you're doing. That is really, really important and a lot of fun from my aspect, and I'm sure from yours too, Billy.
I was telling Coach Stephenson before we started the interview, I normally, originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, went to Broadville High School, been away from the state of Indiana for a good 20, 25 years. But I live in Houston, Texas. We are in Dallas this weekend. So I'm coming from Dallas. So, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, you are coming from High Point, North Carolina?
Yes. Yep.
Which is not very far from Virginia, where you were born and raised. And can you tell us a little bit about your family and where you were born and raised?
Well, I was born and raised from my parents, obviously. And we did live, excuse me, which is not far from Virginia. You're right. To get to the state line is not bad. We talked before we came on the air how important this type of aspect is really important for people that have an idea what college basketball, and particularly Indiana basketball, how important it is. And it just sort of pops up at unlikely times, just all of a sudden somebody will be in the food line and they're picking up their burger and fries, and ahead of them somebody's talking about the last game last night, and now they've got to do this, they got to do that to win the sectional, the regional, Unless you have had that experience, it's really hard to replicate. And it's a lot of fun to look back on it, and there's a lot of stories out there, and so many that I don't think you could write them all, or I could read them all at one time.
So brothers and sisters, was your family an athletic family?
I did. I'm the youngest of three. My brother, who just passed away about 3 years ago, he was a 4-year letterman at Marion High School in our little town in Marion, Virginia. It's like maybe 4,000 people or 5,000 people then, a little bit more now. My sister played basketball. She was a cheerleader as well, but this will date me, Billy, maybe the highlight of your show. My sister played basketball back when basketball was 3-on-3, half court. And you played up to the mid-court line, and if you hadn't picked up your man by then then somebody was going to do something. But it was they played the 5-on or 6-on-6, the 3-on. You could not pass the midcourt line, and I tell that story, and so many people don't know about that. But because my sister was academically inclined, that was wonderful to every now and then hear somebody talking about that too. But yeah, I was born and raised in Marion. Emory and Henry College is only about 20 miles or so from my hometown in Marion. We all of us played in various levels, but it's sort of, I guess it is. It's you can describe us as a family that loves sports. My mother would not miss a Braves game at night. Well, there's 100 and some baseball or however many baseball games. My mom would not miss Braves baseball games well into her 80s. And there was never the first question being, well, how's Stafford doing? Well, wait a minute. How did the Braves doing? Oh, and by the way, how is Stafford doing? So it was, she was very active, very believing in the importance of all of that. And we had a good neighborhood, a good town, just like you would probably expect looking at Hoosier back 50 years ago or 60 years ago. That's the type of town that I grew up in. And it was something that I'll cherish and still enjoy and have great interesting conversations. We're starting to have some pretty long the idea of let's go out, and there's no hamburger stands anywhere. There's nothing else. If you want it, you get hot dogs and hamburgers. It's just a different time back in time, and we have missed so much of it. I know this. It's nothing that's magical, but there's a lot of situations that we really enjoy it. And as I said, my brother passed away. My sister is still living and doing very well. So it's been a good life so far, as they say. So. And basketball and athletics has, my brother was 4 years letterman in our hometown, 4 years worth. So he knew what and competition was very, very definite in his growth, and just enjoyed every minute of it. Billy, no doubts about it.
So did you guys have a basketball hoop in the on the driveway or at the house, or?
Yeah. Yep, we did. It was in the backyard. It was sort of sloped like this, and it was a wooden backboard that somehow somebody put it in, and it became, the people that used to gather in the neighborhood. If what anything going, let's shoot some hoops, and that's hoops hysteria fits in very nicely there. And but yeah, it wasn't a different thing, but that experience, I identify very closely with that. And if nobody was around, I'd just go out and start shooting, even if it was in weather that may have gotten your mom very hot tempered at you for bringing it in the house. So, but yeah, that was a good, big, important part.
We know that you eventually made it to Indiana for coaching at the University of Evansville, but I like 6 degrees of separation on our show, which is you didn't start out in Indiana. You got to Indiana, but you didn't start out to Indiana. But your high school was Marion High School, and I'm sure you know what the Marion High School in the state of Indiana has meant to the game of high school basketball. I mean, you mean Bill Green, and they did 3 in a row state championships. But what was Marion High School like in the basketball category. Was basketball set up in Virginia like it wasn't set up in Indiana, where there was one winner, or was it broken down in divisions or classes?
Yeah, it was up until, I don't know, probably 15 years ago. I don't know that date exactly, but yeah, that the way that they played the game, the tournament set up, as that was so very important. I mean, the thread of college or high school basketball. Marion High School, on the other hand, as small as we were, we had a very good high school basketball coach, but it was just a different category. It meant something different. I was speaking several years ago at a deal, and the people that I was speaking with were from Marion, Virginia, and my hometown. And so they were talking about it, and it just so happened that about 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that, they were going into the state playoffs, in which everybody at that time was included. Didn't make any difference if you hadn't won hadn't won a game, you could still win the state championship. Well, we all of a sudden, that conversation escalated a little bit, and the guy said, "Yeah, but isn't that just a bunch of bunk? Isn't that just, what? It's all a newspaper thing, right? Is that?" I said, "Let me tell you this." And I went through Ralph Sampson as an example in Harrisonburg from Virginia. And that the year that he was in the state championship and won the state championship, his Harrisonburg high school team. But we weren't, it wasn't the same atmosphere that it set up to be. And as I was telling them the sectional, the regional, the semi-state, the all of that, and how they will run people out of the stadium between games in certain levels as they're playing. I mean, you might play a couple of games of very high intensity on those days. It was amazing. So the guys, as I was talking, my mouth drooped more and more and more. It was like dumbfounded, like, "Oh, really? Is that right?" Now, again, granted, this was back to the old, one single state championship setup. It wasn't the open one as we have now. But it was, I had an audience there that was dumbfounded by what I was telling them about the importance of, particularly basketball in Indiana. You check your bags when you're going out of town, because everybody's going to be at that ball game. Nobody's going to be breaking into your house stealing anything. There's a game tonight. A big game. But I miss that. Still saw in the past, I've seen some, high school games. I had a friend that went, and I went, whatever. But it was a situation that, people I think that truly understand it, and others that don't probably never will. Don't know.
Who did you learn the game of basketball from, or what team or games did you listen to on the radio or follow in the newspaper, or was there any particular person that was always prominently there, or that you kind of emulated your game about, or that kind of provided the passion for your love of basketball?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I hadn't thought about this for a long time. When I was a kid, and I had a little transistor radio. I don't know if you ever made or had one, or they were literally about that big. And, they had this wide sound range that could go all the way maybe 3 hours away, or 2 hours, or an hour away. But game night, basketball night, I could go home, get my pajamas, get into bed, turn the radio, the transistor radio, and listen to the Van Arsdale brothers in, I can't remember now where they played, Muncie, I can't remember the team, but Was that I'm sorry, I broke up on me there.
They played at Manual High School in Indianapolis and then went on to play at Indiana University.
That's it. Okay. Yeah, but I remember listening to the Twins, and I think, oh, that'd be great to be one of those guys. Boy, I'm halfway across the country almost listening to Indiana high school basketball. That's only not a whole lot thicker than my pen is, but I would listen until my folks wouldn't let me listen anymore. You get to bed or go eat supper or whatever it happened to be. But yeah, that was interesting that impact was felt halfway across the country in the high school basketball games. And excuse me, I felt that was a part of it. High school coach, my junior varsity high school basketball coach was a guy named Sonny Smith. Sonny Smith went on to be a very successful high school coach and then on to the college levels. He was head coach of 2 or 3 different institutions. But when he started in my hometown, and the first 2 years that Sonny was there, he was gathering all that feeling as he would feel every game, that he wanted to soak it in, see what it's like. And then he took a job in Indiana, not for any other reason other than Sonny wanted to get that atmosphere of Indiana basketball that he was not able to get in North Carolina or Virginia or Tennessee. So that was just an amazing situation. I think that I lost my thought.
We were talking about people that
Sonny,
or the basketball players or basketball coaches that were that you enjoyed at a young age or kind of influenced you at a young age.
That's it. And Sonny Smith was one that was very, very had a definite an impact on our lives, and especially our athletic what we brought to the table as well. But Sonny left and took a job in Indiana for, I think it was 2 years, to come back to Virginia or North Carolina, which is where he was from. But it was another step that you think back and you think, oh yeah, that's right, that's this or that's so and so's brother or whatever it was. But it was that aspect or that respect that you had for the game, that you wanted to go play at the best and at the best level. And if you could do that, then you could win some games. The coaches were the things that I would, when I was coaching at Evansville and Southern Illinois and recruiting in those areas, Indiana, Illinois in particular, I would love to see, I'd almost pick my recruiting trip out based on who am I going to see play. And the high school coaches, too many to mention and too many that, people just, it's amazing. And it's amazing to think how confident high school coaches were and competent as well. But the other coaches had such held high regard for people and for those kids, and you'd see that a team, and this was, I love this. It didn't happen all the time, but when it did, you got that tinkle up your back. You had in one of those levels of games, whether it was a regional or the sectional or whatever, you would hook into a game that included a very famous high school basketball coach whose team happens to be now playing someone else in that pyramid going up. And watch those high school coaches work. It was amazing. and it opened up a whole thing for me. I mean, no question about it. And I had great high school coaches. I was tickled. You know, there was nothing wrong with them. It was just, man, I can't believe, you know, all the cities, the towns that Indiana brought to the table. But they were really well coached. Expectations were high. The Milam town situation that won the state championship in the 50s. And that was the one that everybody, as you know, points toward as, well, we can't give up our single basketball. Well, I think we did. I know we did. And it was not something that I guess people, I don't know what it's like there now, what the atmosphere is like. But there for a couple of years, it really, I think, adversely affected high school basketball. But the coaches were the ones that I'd love to watch them. And that's a part of what Sonny Smith was coming out of the mountains of Virginia and Tennessee to come to Indiana. And I'm sure he would have been out on the driveway or in the mud puddle or wherever he was going to play, he was going to play. And he was only about 6'2". His hands weren't big enough to palm a basketball, but he was a great competitor as well from a playing standpoint, even though, you know, he's a newcomer, so to speak. But yeah, it was an interesting time, and still is an interesting time, I'm sure. But think of the coaches. That was always something it was imprinted in me somehow or other.
Were you any good at baseball? Did they have football at the time that, you know, or was basketball your primarily love in junior high, high school? And
yeah, I played basketball and baseball. We had football. I didn't play. We had in our hometown baseball and track and basketball. Trying to think if it was something else, another sport that I'm missing. Didn't have soccer, didn't have lacrosse, didn't have a lot of those sports that have become almost, you know, automatic in our towns today. But I don't. Football was important, but not as important as Indiana basketball. And I'm biased. I'll be the first to say that. And I don't have a phone number to pass out to you, so you never will. So, but it was, we had very good high school football too. Again, with the size issue, there were only two grade levels or levels of play. And we were very successful in high school football, but it was just a prelude to the real game that was going to be starting in a couple of months.
What was your favorite baseball team growing up? Was it the Braves because of your mom?
No, Yankees.
Yeah, no, Yankees.
Yeah, and I not believe this or not, and don't believe it because it's not right, not true. I saw in the paper a week or so ago about the kid that had saved his Mickey Mantle rookie card, 5.4 million. We're in the wrong business, Billy. We got to hang it up here. Let's go hunt that guy down. But that's amazing, you know, 5.4 million. But I'm like everybody else. I wanted to be with the winner. So as a kid, the Yankees were my team. The only other team that I had an aunt and uncle that lived in Philadelphia, and we would every year in summer, we'd go up and spend a week or maybe 10 days with my aunt and uncle. And along the trip somewhere, we would find a baseball game with the Phillies playing, or with I guess that was primarily the other sport that that had some really people would get excited about. The Phillies, they were not a good baseball team in the early 50s, but they were, the Yankees obviously were in their heyday. And in going through the garage, I come across my baseball cards, not all of them. I sold a bunch of them. And so it was nothing, no big deal. It was not 5.4 million. Let me just tell you that right now. But yeah, that was the other one. The Braves. I don't remember what year they came into the Major League Baseball. I don't think. Well, they were. Yeah, they were, because Hank Aaron, bless his heart. You talk about class people. That is one. But yeah, that would, I guess the Braves were a part of Major League Baseball at that time, but they weren't on my radar. I guess because of the closeness, the Phillies, the Washington Senators were closer team to my hometown, and then occasionally you throw in the Philly with my aunt and uncle's permission.
It's interesting. The Yankees. I think 27 World Series championships. You want to be associated with the winner. When we were kids, it's that particular media that was going on at that particular time kind of influences you a little bit on who you need to follow, or because they're always in the paper or they're always on the radio. I love doing this because when I was growing up in Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Indians were the AAA affiliate for the Cincinnati Reds. So the Cincinnati Reds was the big red machine when I was a little kid, and 2 World Series back to back. They probably should have won 3 or even 4 in the 70s. And it's interesting how we're drawn to, and it's interesting how geographical lines, like people that I've interviewed from Southern Indiana, go toward the St. Louis Cardinals. People that I've talked to that were raised in Northern Indiana kind of go with those White Sox or those Cubs. Yeah. And then Central Indiana, you got the, possibility just because of the closeness of Cincinnati. And of course, once again, your transistor radio, and being able to pick up, WLW or, whatever it is in Cincinnati, and picking up those games. It's very interesting to hear from different perspectives from different people around the country on, who they followed, who they fell in love with, and, that type of stuff.
It absolutely. My best friend growing up still remains very close to me. For some reason, he picked up on the Cleveland Indians. Well, the Cleveland Indians, not Indianapolis, but Cleveland. And he was a big fan of them. I was a big fan of the Yankees, and those two batted heads frequently. But JS was going to be with the Indians. I mean, just Dick Wirtz and, Bobby Avila and those guys in that age group. Excuse me. But it was a big variety. I don't know, and I don't know what really pushed JS to the Indians as opposed to staying with the Braves or going up. I don't know. I don't know what caused it to happen, but it did, and it was JS was going to be. He was going to be on the Indians. We used to play make-believe baseball where, I'm so-and-so and you're so-and-so and I'm going to pitch to you and you're going to pitch to me and we're going to hit them out of, all of that stuff that we did as kids. You just, you think back and you think, yeah, I haven't come up with an answer yet. And I haven't thought to ask JS his answer to that question, which is really the meat of the bone right there.
Why? Why?
Why?
Why the Indians? Why?
Exactly. I will find out though. Get you some information.
Now, playing high school basketball there at Marion, you went in and played at Emory at Henry College. did you have other choices? What was recruiting like back then? And I don't mean that in a way I emphasize back then, but did you have other choices that you wanted to? Was there other places that you wanted to go play basketball, or did you want to stay local and stay close to home?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Emory and Henry was a 3-year, or was a 4-year coach at university. In a lot of cases, if you weren't good enough, you could still play, but there may not be scholarship funds available for you. So it was like a Division III school or Division IV school, really. It's just on the borderline. I was a good high school player, but I'm 6 feet tall. And when you're going into that next level, yeah, size makes a difference in that case. So I was fortunate enough to be recruited and to go to Emory and Henry, spend 4 years there, get my degree, played ball every year, started every game of my career in college, which I'm proud of that. And that was an unusual situation for most people, but certainly back then. Emory and Henry was was literally just, I think if we sort of sensed it, you're not going to see many Division I players at that level. You're not going to find any. You'll find a Division II or maybe Division I low major, that type of scenario. But there were limits on recruiting that I didn't know about. I wasn't in their radar. I wasn't in theirs. So it was no big deal. I played every game and very proud of that and had fun doing it. And some great friends that we went our different ways after 4 years. And that's an important part of our college experience, and particularly in basketball or sports of any type, really. We had baseball, we had football. There weren't many other sports. There were some track. I think we mentioned them in Indiana or other parts of the country. But it was good competition. We weren't the best Division III school in our state. Part of that was funding, the amount of funding that we were able to get, and it was primarily through private sources. Go out and recruit and get your players, as well as get your, whatever. If you can peel off a little bit of that help, it was legal. There's not a problem at all with that. But it was not as important. I think I played baseball for 2 years in high school. But my love of basketball was going this way, and it was getting met the other way from baseball coming home. So baseball was not as important as a senior, I think, as it was earlier. I think there's a question out there, and I may have run over it.
What other choices could you have made to play college athletics?
Right. Probably the best team, and looking back at it today, it wasn't the same game, but there's a very good Division III high school program, Old Dominion Athletic Conference, ODAC, really high level academically, basketball or sports. We were in that geography footprint. So we had some built-in opportunities to really, have your eligibility be printed, and people have a chance to see you, and that may lead to a scholarship. It may not lead to a scholarship, just like we mentioned. But we still enjoyed it. and it was not that level of certainly 1A or Division One, and sort of as it was coming down, I'm not too proud to say it was. I love playing, and would play every opportunity that I could, and I don't regret it for 1 minute about going there. And I got a good degree, enjoyed it. Made a relationship with one of my basketball coaches, a guy named Tony Mandible out of Florida. Tony was a character, and he recruited. He was the one that first planted the thoughts about scholarships and recruiting, and that aspect of it that sort of got away from what we had going on at our level at that time. Doesn't make any sense. But what we would do is we would play our games, and after one home game, Tony Mandible came up to me and he said, Tony Mandible, assistant coach at Emory, and this was all legal, a whole different ball game at that point. He said, "Here's my card. I'd like to follow you and see you play again." And I was blown away. Oh, here's a scholarship guy. Well, it wasn't a scholarship guy, but it was somebody wanted me. First letter I got was from Lefty Driesell. Now, Lefty, as a high school player, just now thought of that one. But Lefty was the master of recruiting, and he introduced, I think, all the letters, the mass mailings that you send, every other day or every other week or once a month, whatever it was, you were going to be sending out your list of players, of prospects that you wanted to. You couldn't recruit all of them, and I think, quite honestly, to be truthful about it, I think it was. I got that letter because I happened to be on his list for that gap of time or whatever we were doing recruiting wise. But that was one of those things and this was back Lefty Driesell, when Davidson was really coming into play and making a print on the national basketball scene, high school. Met Tony Mandible. He saw me play a couple of games. He came. He said, "I'd like to talk to your mom and dad." They came to every game. My parents did not miss a basketball game of mine at Emory and Henry that I can remember. And Emory and Henry is not exactly in the middle of downtown Manhattan. It's out of town somewhere. But it was quite a time, and with Lefty stoking my embers, that gave me a whole different feeling, and it led me into and toward recruiting and doing that, because I knew I was good, but I wasn't good enough that was going to put me in the NBA, and that was not going to happen, and I realized that. Didn't have a problem with that, but Tony did. He basically saw me play a couple times more, and they offered me a partial scholarship. You could break up your scholarships too. So if you had 3 scholarships that were worth $1,000, you had $3,000. You could break them up however you wanted them. Okay. Excuse me. But they when Tony offered me my scholarship. Is it somebody? Oh, anyway, so I was recruited by Hampton-Sydney College. That was another school in that old ODAC. The recruiting that I got was primarily, I'll call it secondary recruiting. I wasn't the top list guy to sign, but good enough to help that team win. And so it was, yeah, I enjoyed Emory. Emory was fun, and it gave me a chance to meet Tony. Tony went to the University of Tennessee, got his master's degree and he was a single guy with a red Corvette. Oh, there's heaven. Oh man, he is so cool. And so, but Tony was really a good basketball person and a great guy, and he'll jump on you in a heartbeat. He wasn't going to back off of anything he said or did. He was there to make you better and to win ball games, and in a very positive way. So I stayed there for 2 years, and actually I stayed there for 4 years. Tony was there for 2 years, and he left, but he was he had a lot of impact on me. I think as far as my career is concerned in basketball.
So you're getting ready to graduate from college. You already have the seed of you want to coach the game.
Say that once more, please. It broke up on me, right?
That's okay. So you're graduating from college. So you already have the seed planted that you want to coach the game, or was there something else that you wanted to try and do first before going into coaching?
Well, Uncle Sam had an idea about where he wanted me to go, because that was the height of Vietnam, and I was in the cat. I remember the old drafts, or not old enough to know that maybe. But if I had stayed in my hometown, I was at the top of JS that I mentioned earlier myself. We were at the top of the draft list in our county. So it wasn't a matter of when you're going to go. It's get your butt and get out of here, because you're going now. And so I didn't want that. I didn't want that. So I was not, I waited with bated breath to see how that draft was going to work that particular year that I was going to be in there. And my draft status said, you stay home. you don't need to go to Vietnam. And so that saved me in a sense. But that aspect of Vietnam played really a lot in what decision I was going to make. At Emory, and then after Emory, it continued to have an impact on my life.
So who gives you your first coaching opportunity?
The guy's name was Harold Lambert, and Harold was a really good athlete, and football, basketball. He's from my hometown. He played on the high school team that my brother played on. They played together as teammates at Marion High School. And I forgot to tell you that they, yes, by the way, they won a state championship. I think they had 2 divisions at that point. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I know that, yeah, I don't know. But they won a state championship, and just not know which level it took. So Harold was took a job at Pulaski High. That was the name of the high school, Pulaski High School. And so as season went through, it became more and more obvious that the high school team was going to be very successful that year, and they ended up going on and winning a state championship. Well, that was like 54 or 55, somewhere in that name, or in that time. And my brother was a year older, but he's, they also love to watch us play. it was one of those things. I think that I'm sure. Come back to me on that one.
It's interesting with these Zoom interviews. I've seen your wife walk in the background. I just seen our friend here walk in the background. It's kind of like, oh, they're not doing anything important. Let me just walk on by, looking like Yogi Bear in the shooting gallery in a cartoon.
Oh, me.
So my question was, what was your first step in coaching? What was your first coaching job?
I took a job at Pulaski Junior High School, and my brother's good friend Harold Lambert had graduated, and he was looking to hire somebody.
Share my story. This is what makes these good, by the way. It's like, oh my gosh, what's going on back there? So no worries. This is good. This is good. We have to have a little comedy relief.
Oh, me. But yeah, my Harold gave me my first job. I was JV basketball coach, JV assistant football coach, and golf. Now that was actually by another buddy of mine, but I was on the fill-in coaching aspect. But that was sort of where I met and got Harold was one of those boys from out in the country that he didn't have a whole lot to say, but you better be careful when he does decide to say something, and not in any negative way at all. He was very very good man and a very good basketball coach, and knew how to motivate people, but he didn't motivate them to get a scholarship or something. He modified it to play and to get the best he could out of himself. So he stayed first 2 years out of college from Emory and Henry. I played in Pulaski, Virginia, and then went to another small town in Virginia, called Bristol, Virginia. It's right on the state line. And then we moved from that into the collegiate ranks of coaching. But it was Harold and his family, and then my brother sort of tagged into that one. And Carl Tacey, former coach at Wake Forest, had passed away recently. I worked for Carl for a couple of years in between high school and college, playing opponents. But I think that's sort of initially going back to that basketball seed. We had people that knew how to cultivate that.
Like in Indiana, if you're from Kentucky, you're just a lower class citizen, and we'd really not deal with you. In Virginia, is that the way you guys treat people from West Virginia?
Of course not. Of course not. We were sportsmen. There were a couple of people that we would sort of like to try to maybe be a little bit more active, but no, we didn't have any West Virginians on our team.
So how did you get into college basketball coaching? Was there a secret to it, or so you coached for Wake Forest? How did that door open?
It's not sometimes what you know, it's who you know. And the magic name there was Carl Tacey. Carl had coached junior college basketball in Southwest Virginia, where I was from. And he was top notch. Different kind of breed of cat, but he was really a good man, and he'll be missed in the coaching profession, I think. But so he had a position on his staff as a graduate assistant, and from that, all that meant was is he could work me as hard as he wanted to, and he didn't have to pay me anything. Whoops, I dropped something there. What happened?
You're good. I got you there.
Okay.
And he didn't have to pay you anything.
That's right. That's right. Well, he basically paid me the cost of being a scholarship athlete at Wake Forest in basketball, whatever that figure was. I don't know what it was, but that's where it got me going, and I was very fortunate that Carl had that position on his staff at that time, and so I was happened to, during, not what you know, it's who you know, got a call from Coach Tacey and offered me a position on his staff and a graduate assistant position, because at the time Wake Forest was just getting Coach Tacey was just getting his program started at that point. And Bobby was an excellent player and an excellent player, and somebody that athletically, he's capable of winning games for you at any level. So, so I worked with Carl for 2 years and went and started working for a guy and offered me a position as a head coach in the junior college. Well, that gave me a slot that I didn't have in my resume, and that was a head coaching collegiate basketball program. And so that happened to be the opportunity that I was looking forward to stay and hopefully move that bar on up and continue to advance until Evansville. And but it was I was always probably the luckiest guy in the world, because people took a liking to me, and I worked hard and enjoyed working hard for Coach Tacey and the rest of the staff. So it was really the step into college ranks is probably not your notion the way people do it. So it was leading us into me being another assistant coach. This time, Bobby Watson had gotten a job at Oral Roberts University and was an assistant coach there. And Bobby they didn't come any better. And so that was sort of leading toward more completion to my resume, so to speak.
And so Bobby Watson goes from Oral Roberts to Evansville because of Jerry Sloan decides not to take the position?
Yeah, probably, I'm sure. Jerry didn't say a whole lot about it, but no, I think that it definitely was that a factor involved in how Bobby got there. But yes, Bobby was on the staff at Wake Forest with Carl Tacey and me, and a guy named Neil McGahee that had professional or coaching in that at that level. But yes, then Bobby went from Ferrum Junior College to Wake Forest as an assistant, on to Evansville, and excuse me, that was his transition to get from where he wanted to go and how he planned on getting there. So
So when do you get that phone call to come and assist Bobby at Evansville?
I got it I knew that Bobby had gotten a job. He called me. It had to be around the first week of April, the way it was breaking down with when you could go to recruit and so forth. So I think that it was probably the first week of April, maybe later. And he said, he called me, when he called me up, he said, this is between you and me, but Jerry's not going to take the job. And so you hang by the phone. That's all I'll say. So I understood what that meant. And sure enough, within a day or two, he called and said, I have a position on my staff. I'd like to offer it to you. And I jumped at it. There was no questions in my mind at all, primarily because of the type of person Bobby was. But there was a legendary coach. They ran McCutcheon, Indiana background. Excuse me. So Carl or Arad initially was planning, I think, on coming back, but I think he was done. I think he was worn out at that level at Division I, but really it's a little, I know where Evansville is such a unique city, that the people that were involved in working at that level didn't know how intense that could be.
Yeah, because he's going from multiple national championships and beating teams like beating it really a Division I school, in my opinion. So, and especially with the competition, who they played, undefeated, I think 1 or 2 years with their national championships. But to Division I was really kind of just, it was different for Evansville, but I think McCutcheon just really didn't have the energy to want to work it to that level. Am I correct?
Yes, I think so. Coach McCutcheon was just another one. I say this, you've heard many times this morning, you've heard that, he's really a good person. He's really doing this. And I think that subconsciously, I don't think I realized that I was sort of trying to gather people around me that I wanted to be around me, that it's sort of thinking about out of that box, as they say today. But I think that's exactly right. It was Carl or Arad had the ability to coach anybody.
They were Division I, but they weren't Division I. If that comment makes sense.
Amen. That's it on the nose. And yeah, it was just, that was absolutely correct. So there was the break, I think, with Evansville as really planting their feet to say, all right, we're going Division I, we're going to do it right. Whatever else was said to get people to do it, it was done. But yeah, I think that's everything you said about that as far as the thought process, I think, is probably exactly what happened.
Your wife on board with you moving your positions, children coming along at the same time? Was it difficult to move the family and take other positions as a coach? Did that work on your relationship or your relationship with your wife or with your kids? How did that, picking up everybody and moving at time to time?
I think that they enjoyed it. You could ask them for sure, but I think that they did enjoy it. They were young enough that, and I don't know what the age limits were, but they weren't very old, obviously, as kids. But I don't think they ever had any resentment about dropping up here and moving to there. I think they sort of enjoyed it. We were fortunate. The wives of players, of coaches, really first-class people, and so it made it easier. And they would always say, what's your number, and I will get my wife to give you a call, and maybe we can go out and go get dinner, or whatever. That's sort of what the way it went, and the people that were on board, as well as their spouses, did I think a wonderful place to be, and always enjoyed those places. They were good. They were good Southern Indiana, Southern Illinois type personalities. So I think it was very fortuitous for all of us for the most part.
Coach, how much time did you have at Evansville to create relationships with players and coaches before the disaster?
We signed our contracts and came to Evansville roughly. My birthday is like May 7th. It was the first week of May that we had been working our tail ends, recruiting and all the things from ground zero that you had to do to get the program going. I think that actually from the decision-making process, which was around the first part of May, maybe a little bit earlier than that in May, and then it was over after that, and that was December the 13th. So it was June, July, May, June, July, August, September, October. It was probably about a 6 or 7 week period of time that we actually had time to continue the development process and get our people attuned to what we wanted and expected from them.
Did you expect that, were you expecting like an expansion baseball team or expansion basketball team? Did you guys expect to have a rough year, or did you think that, we have a pretty good squad here that we've put together, we may go 500 or we may surprise ourselves?
I think that's exactly right. That is exactly right. I think that we probably had a chance to be better than what we expected them to be. We had won one game out of 3 or out of 4 games that we had played, and we came off the court after Indiana State. Larry Bird and Perry Morgan and all of those guys, they were ranked, number 1 or 2 in the country. And our kids had won the last game before that, and in a way much better. We didn't get run out of the gym like that. So I think the kids got a little excited and a little, they got fired up, which was good. We wanted it to be, but they didn't have a clue as to how tough it was going to be to play basketball at this Division I level that you hear about. The thing that I think that saved a lot and helped a lot in terms of the team's development was we had 4 or 5 kids, maybe 3 or 4, that were really good players. And they were going to play. They're not going to necessarily be a Division I star, but they're going to be pretty doggone good. And I think that had a lot to do. They sort of knocked them back in their heels a little bit. So, whoa, wait a minute, this is tough. This Indiana State level game is different. But yeah, I think that was a period in time that I think the kids did respond and react that brought it to a different level.
What did you think of Larry Bird when you watched him play? What did you think, well, hey, this guy's cocky, or this guy won't make it, or did you think, wow, I'm watching something special?
I think that latter is the way that I think I felt about it. You obviously don't ever want to go into a game saying, "Oh boy, if we can hold them to 30, we're going to be in good shape." And think, "Whoa, wait a minute, what did you say?" We didn't have kids that said that. We were able to get that feeling installed in that development process with our kids. And Bird, Bird, as you know, he's a bird of a different color. Literally, he's a bird of a different color. Because he could play. He could play anywhere you want him to play. And it's been borne out when you see, what success he had for professional leagues. And I think that Larry was cocky, very self-confident. And you know how he shot it, you know how he passed it. He was a joy to watch, and he was tougher than nails. And you just you had to watch from not watching yourself and watching Larry make a couple of passes and hit a couple of shots, and then let's go watch something else here a little bit. Because you had that deal of do you hold the star with maybe double teaming or trying to double team him, as opposed to a coach that you're not going to gang up on somebody. We're going to play everybody else one-on-one, heads up, and we'll see what happens. And if Bird makes that much difference, then so be it. Well, so be it. we got ourselves so beat it at Indiana State in that early season game. But I think he was a heck of a player, no doubt. And I happened to work at his basketball camp that first year, and Jim Jones was a high school coach in high school that actually played for not far from Evansville. But without going into all the details with that, he was one that I don't know what the answer was to answer that question of, you gang him and make him pass it off, or just back off, play him one-on-one and see what he can do to you. So,
Coach, so there's the picture of like maybe me going into the doctor's office as a kid knowing that I'm going to have to get a shot. So you kind of look a little either like you're thinking, that I'm going to ask the question, and it has to be hard on you mentally, probably to this day. But take us through December 13th.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. It's I've seen you kind of change a little bit, and I think you kind of like, well, I really don't want to answer this question because I've answered it before, or just the amount of loss, or it's,
I don't have that feel at all. Okay, so that don't worry about that. December 13th was like one of these Indiana days that we've had here this past 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It just sort of seems like it settles in. It's chilly, it's damp, it's overcast, it's an awful day. And we chartered primarily and flew to Middle Tennessee State. That's our next opponent was. the plane that we were flying on had a good flight record and all that stuff. And it was like the team. I wasn't there. I had gone that morning to Florida. I'm no dummy. To Florida to recruit and combination scout and recruiting. So I'd left. I'd gone that morning at like 7 o'clock in the morning. I left. I flew to Tallahassee or somewhere in Florida. I can't remember now where it was. Checked in at a hotel, went out and got something to eat, and then went out and started making some calls that I had set up before the trip. Beautiful day. I was up there in Indiana where it's cold and rainy and dreary, and the rest of the team and the selected people on the team were stuck in Indiana for about 2 hours, I think it was, after they were due to leave. I was going that night, December 13th. I was leaving. I'd left that morning to go to Indiana or Florida, and went out. I was scouting a game that night, a high school kid playing in the Tampa area, good size, I hung around after the game was over, and I'm sitting there watching TV, or we're talking to the coaches and the families and the parents. And at that time, again, you could do some of those things. And, I didn't know anything was going on. I didn't know that there was a problem or nothing. I was just watching games and evaluating and talking to the parents and all that stuff, to the point where I hadn't eaten lunch. I hadn't eaten an early lunch and dinner, but I was hungry now. Got to the hotel, and I went in, checked in my room. I missed the Johnny Carson show. The show had since gone on from that to the next, whatever they do with having people come visit their show. The point being, I didn't know anything had happened. It was late. I ate a burger and fries. I watched the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and I fell asleep and went to bed at around 11:30, 12 o'clock. Didn't know anything. Woke up the next morning still, and normally what I would do is I would call my wife to say, hey, I'm here, or whatever. Well, this case, I tried, but I couldn't get in touch with the body. And then we had to get in touch with the body. We had our, I was getting up the next morning, made a couple of phone calls to firm up appointments for the afternoon. Made those phone calls, went downstairs to get a cup of coffee, came back up. As I was coming back upstairs, I happened to just glance down and look at a newspaper rack. It had one of those pull-out things. You put a quarter in and get it out or whatever. And so I looked at, as I was coming up the stairs, I happened to just glance at the newspaper. And it said on the newspaper, it said basketball team plane crashes on plane. And I said, boy, that is awful. The basketball coach, their team gets killed. And all of a sudden, it just hit me as I was looking at the newspaper. It was almost like names were just sort of almost jumping off the front page. Bob Hudson and Bobby Watson, and just name after name. And it was surreal. I couldn't believe I was seeing what I saw. as soon as it sunk in, and this is the next day, I called, I started calling my wife, and she had been trying to call me. She didn't know where I was, other than I was in Florida. She had called and checked even the hotel that I was in, but for some reason they didn't have me registered. I finally got through to Jim Byers, our athletic director, and he was on his way to the university for there was some type of service, I think, in the Roberts Stadium the next day, or the day after the plane crash. and I hung up and I started getting on the phone to get my plane flight changed, which we did thanks to Eastern Airlines. I got my flight changed. I got them to hold the plane to allow me time to put something in the newspaper, in the magazines, or into the in my suitcase. And basically, from the time that I first saw the headlines, basketball team dies in plane crash, it was on. I mean, it was just totally, I was fortunate enough to get a flight back, got into Evansville that afternoon. This is the day after the crash. And I mean, people had already begun making funeral arrangements and all the things that go into that. And still in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about, that can't be right. It can't be right. And it was. But it was surreal. I don't know of any other way to put it.
How long did that? I mean, it's probably something you still think of on a daily basis. How long until you really wrapped your mind around it? Or
I think it probably really sank itself in was, I'd gone to several funerals, and 2 in North Carolina, and flew back after being gone for the plane crash occurred on Tuesday. I left Thursday, I think, on a several stop with the team, with the parents and so forth. I think it was after the North Carolina visits with their parents. I and a member of our administration who were on a plane flying back to High Point or to Evansville. That was the first time where I think I just had a chance to take a deep breath and begin to engulf it with that. You know, just it was what it was, and it was something that was very definitely true. But it was, I would say, it was probably about a 4-day period, maybe 5, of attending funerals and so forth. We mentioned this on the radio or the other day when we talked about this. And I'm not pushing anybody or book anybody on this, but Kyle, what's his Lido?
Kyle, and I may be screwing up this last name. I think it's Ketterling.
Ketterling, I think that's right.
Trophies, Trophies and Tears.
Yep, a great book, and it talks to more about just basketball. It talks about going back when Evansville was was a back in the old days, and I mean way old. And he brings you up very succinctly and very intelligently to where you want to read it and read and read and read, because you're finding out a lot of it interesting information and how the development of Evansville, it just it's a fascinating book, and it's a historical book, and then it's got sports in it. He just did I think an outstanding job with that, and he handled very sensitive situations with so much class, and you knew that you were talking to a professional, and he knew what the deal was. But yeah, that was that we'll go back now. Yeah, it was probably getting back from North Carolina and landing. I think it was a Sunday night, late. And one of the other administrators were on the same flight coming back from Raleigh. And that was pretty much, I think, if not the start of it, it may have been the start of, for me, to begin to try to get a grip on this. And I don't know if you ever get your heads around that.
Yeah, you had, and I'm probably going to miss a few here. You had Mike Duff, Brian Taylor, Steve Miller, Warren Austin, John Ed Washington, Craig Heckendorn, Mike Dorner, Mark Siegel, Barney Lewis, Keith Moon, Kevin Kingston, Ray Camandela, Greg Smith, Tony Winburn, of course, Coach Bobby Watson, Bob Hudson, Charles Scheich, Greg Knipping, Jeff Bonnert, Mark Kirkpatrick, Mark Canese, Maurice Maury King, Charles Goad, and Marv Bakes. You just can't, it's like 9/11. You don't want those names to be lost in history. You want those to be brought up and people to remember and stuff like that. So I know that was a rough question, and I know you've been asked time after time after time, and if ifs and nuts were candies and nuts, stuff like that. But I know that was rough to go through again. But I think the names and your memory of those names and what happened is appreciated.
You're welcome. I told you when we talked about this earlier in the week. The kids on that team, and it's easy to glorify them, but they were really good kids, and I don't want people to go away. I don't want to have to deal with that. It's part of it, though, and I think it's an important part that kids with such great talent and futures, and I'm not talking about I'm talking about inside your chest, and it's something that I hope people will never forget. Time will change that, I know, but for some of us, I don't know that it ever will change.
Did that? I mean, you move on to coach with the Salukis for a little bit. Did that tragedy kind of lead you away from basketball and into a successful insurance business, or why did you get out of the game of basketball?
Yeah, I think that it did. I don't know that I realized that it did at first. I didn't. I didn't have any overriding thoughts about what happened. I think there was a period of, you mentioned a period of like a week or maybe a month or something like that. I may have said that, but their kids that died that day in the plane crash that had great futures, and not just basketball futures, but good people. It was so remarkable that for me, I want to try to keep people aware. And it's not an easy thing. And now being away from coaching, then it really, sort of has an opportunity to have it fade again. But it's you can do the best you can do, and that's all you can do.
I used to have a conversation with my wife that I saw a video in church one day of a portrayal of a movie of people being in hell and then them saying the word eternity. And I still to this day have a hard time wrapping my mind around the definition of the word eternity. And I still have a hard time wrapping my mind around the Holocaust, the World War II, the Vietnam War, 9/11. The disaster with the Evansville basketball team where all 29 died on that December 13th, 1977. On why them? Why that time period? Why, just like you were saying that all of those guys, what would they be doing today? And I have a hard time wrapping my mind around it. And I guess I need to move on. But it's, that's why I do what I do with keeping the nostalgia alive is continuing to talk about the past so that the future can remember. And, I don't know if that sounds silly or dumb or what.
I think that's very well said. I think there's a lot of bits and pieces there that all fit together to sort of get the whole picture as much as you can.
So when you got into insurance, were you tempted or teased, or did somebody offer you to get back into coaching and you didn't, and you decided to continue with your insurance business? How did that work after being out of coaching for a little while? Did you watch it and miss it? Or did you not miss it and enjoy what you were doing for your family? Did you have other opportunities to coach? How has that gone since not coaching? If that makes a sense for a question.
Yeah, I don't know that I made the decision to get out of coaching because I hadn't been around my kids for years, it seemed like. We were at Southern Illinois, 1 year at Evansville, and then 3 at Southern Illinois. Excuse me. I didn't consciously say, "Oh, today's the day I want to get up and go retire and resign and go do something else." I think it was a graduated process that sort of took took care of that. I don't know that there was anything in particular other than a storm in in Denver, Colorado. Ironically, I was on a recruiting trip up there and got locked into the airport because of the weather. And I made all the calls I could make, and all of a sudden I started thinking, like, what am I doing? I'm 30 years old. I'm, in the mountains of Colorado. I haven't seen my kids in 3 weeks. I'm getting ready to get on a plane to fly back to Chicago to recruit another 19-year-old that maybe can't be just good enough to get us fired. And, it was just crazy. Stayed 1 more year. And the decision was basically made at that point. I think it took place mentally the year before, but I think that year was the year that that was the culmination in my mind.
What do you think about the game of basketball today? And, has it changed a lot to you? Of course, it's different now with the pandemic and all that, but do you still enjoy watching basketball? Do you make a note to sit down and watch a basketball game? Or how are you enjoying, or how has the game changed for you?
Yeah, I think it's a good one. I made decisions to do that, and Ask that question again, please. I'm sorry.
How that's okay. How has the game changed? And do you make a note to sit down and watch a game, or is it just, when you file through the channels and you see a game on, you'll stick and watch it a little bit and think about how the game of basketball has changed since you've been coaching?
Yeah, that's probably very true. I don't sit down and, there's certain games tonight, or not tonight, Duke and Carolina are playing this week sometime this weekend. There's certain games that I want, or certain coaches that maybe I had some contact with or didn't have, but I liked what I was looking. So it was, I don't think that it just seemed to be the right time with that. But I don't know. Yeah,
Would you go back and do it all over again with the game of basketball?
Yeah, I would. And yeah, I think it's very possible. I could still enjoy it. The game has changed considerably in overall parts of it. But I don't sit down and say, tonight is Butler and Ball State playing tonight. I don't care. I'm more interested in watching coaches and players. I like to see, just like the high school basketball coach in Indiana that people go to watch his teams play. Well, that's sort of the way I think in Evansville. Excuse me. I think that it's more of an enjoyment of the game and not as much as it is to start a new one.
Was there anybody that you met, like a basketball coach or someone that you were like, or anybody that you met during your coaching days that you're kind of like, I would not have met this person if I wasn't in the game of basketball? Or did you ever have a wow moment with someone you met or someone you coached against?
Yeah. Jim Valvano, the year that they won the national championship at NC State. And I'm not sure what year that is, but
83, I think.
That's it. Yeah. I was on a flight flying from St. Louis to Raleigh, and in Raleigh, I was going to somewhere else, and Valvano happened to be on the same plane. He was, I saw him when he came in, and I went over and introduced myself and said, I appreciate what you do, and I like the way you play, and keep up the good work. He said, well, thank you. Very nice. Very nice. I get in the car or in the plane. They start to pull us out and going over all the stuff you have to read. And the guy, I noticed that all of a sudden the stewardess got up, came back, and stopped at the seat where I was sitting. And she said, your coaching buddy would like for you to join him in first place. Well, this was on a Sunday afternoon, 2 weeks after St. Louis, or after NC State won, I guess it was that year, in '85. And I thought, whoa. And so I got up and came up. Well, he had an extra seat in first class. He said, I don't like to fly. He just went on and on, just like Jimmy V would do. But we had a great conversation over about a 3.5 hour or 2.5 hours flight, whatever that time plane was. But we talked on and off for as long as you could talk before the planes start coming in. It was very enjoyable. He talked about, all you had to do was just say, tell me about, and that's all you had to do. sit down. You can write a book, read a book, you know, but what he was what he was. And I always liked him. And that was a very nice gesture that he didn't have to do that. He could have just as easily as put his feet up in first class and never said a word. But he wasn't like that. That wasn't what he did. He if you met him, you knew him, and you felt like you knew him anyway. But that's one that sticks in my mind from time to time.
That is spectacular, Jimmy V. Okay, Coach, one other question. I know I've kept you for a while. You've been a great sport, and I know a couple times you're thinking, man, is this almost over? But my last question is, did I see that you were inducted, is it the Wayne County Sports Hall of Fame?
Smith County.
Smith County, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. It's sort of hard to read. But
what was that like, and how did you feel about getting that kind of honor?
I was very much honored, and that I never thought about that. You know, whether it's Cooperstown or Smith County, I think that type of feeling that you get really comes about because of that. And yeah, I'm proud of that, and feel very good about it.
Coach Stafford Stephenson, thank you so much for your time. We went really long. I apologize for that. I know I worked out your brain today, but I thank you so much, and I think everyone will enjoy the interview.
My pleasure entirely. I enjoyed it, and keep up the good work.